But anyway, Charles, let's come back to the UK. And well, we haven't had any rain for quite some time.
We haven't, no. And not just the government, but the BBC is wanting to make much of this. The strength of the climate change narrative for its purveyors is such that almost any kind of weather, and obviously we're talking mostly about dry weather, but almost any kind of weather can be attributed to it. 2025 this year in that regard has been a gift for the fearmongers. So hot off the back of flood warnings, here is the BBC declaring a record drought, something which the government has been reporting in a slightly less melodramatic manner. And it certainly is the case that March was a very dry month. April too has been drier than usual, so they say, which has left several reservoirs described as exceptionally low. So in positing that virtually everything we do with water is wrong, that means that the door is open for solutions. And as usual, the World Economic Forum is on hand with a few recommendations. Most of these, of course, concern public-private partnerships, which are of no benefit to the end user, or the assertion that artificial intelligence is the answer to everything. Now, all of this points to investment at the corporate level, which means the expectation of a return. The Environment Agency points to the further commoditization of water, and not just that which is used for washing and drinking, but water which constitutes what is called blue space. Now, essentially, this means putting a value on large bodies of water, which is precisely why increasing initiatives now focus on the use of water for, in particular, health and well-being reasons. Shown here again by the BBC, this cold water swimming programme is run out of Derriford Hospital in Plymouth, and it's exactly a case in point. Just last week, the National Audit Office released a report about the state of managed water in the UK and what they think needs to be done about it. Now, this is one of their auditors setting it out.
The scale of the challenge facing water regulators is huge. A shortfall of nearly 5 billion litres of water per day is expected by 2050, and government has set the sector statutory targets to reduce its environmental impact. At the same time, consumer trust has fallen to its lowest level since 2011. To address these challenges, the water sector needs to attract an unprecedented amount of investment. There are 3 regulators for the sector: Ofwat, the Environment Agency, and the Drinking Water Inspectorate. They all have different responsibilities which sometimes overlap, but no one has responsibility to inspect wastewater assets. Ofwat, the water sector's economic regulator, expects spending on infrastructure improvements to rise to £47 billion in the next 5 years, as part of at least £290 billion of enhancements needed to meet government's targets over the next 25 years. At the current rate, it would take 700 years to replace the entire existing water main network. Plans are also currently in development for 30 large water supply projects, including 9 reservoirs, which Ofwat estimate will cost an extra £52 billion to build. The need for investment coincides with a period of weakening financial performance and reduced investor confidence in the water sector. DEFRA must understand both the cost and deliverability of its plans and the impact these plans will have on customers' bills.
Indeed, the impact on customers' bills. So the takeaway message there is unambiguous, despite the failings of all those directly associated. Sorry, can we just...
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Directly responsible. The burden of the cost will fall upon those indirectly affected, i.e. you. Now, this is at least consistent with the message from the Environment Agency, and this is what the former chair, Alan Lovell, said back in 2023. He made it clear that to grip the existential risk of supply and demand, we will need to ask the public to save water and pay more for it. Now, for this government, one might think that this presented an opportunity to go some way to sorting things out with their much vaunted planning and infrastructure bill. But in fact, there's absolutely no regard given to the improvement of the water infrastructure or any mention of it being a new consideration in new housing developments. And now it should not be forgotten, though, that the bill does give enormous powers of compulsory purchase of land, and that in the case of agricultural land, any development premium is removed and the landowner may only receive the base agricultural price for the purchase. One very obvious mitigation exercise would be rainwater harvesting, and it's most indicative to note that the Environment Agency actually has a regulatory position on this, which clarifies when you can use harvested rainwater without a water abstraction license. Given that many colonial administrations forbade the harvesting of rainwater in an apparent attempt to stop mosquitoes breeding, it's not too much of a stretch to see that this regulation might change. However, in terms of practical application, it's worth taking a quick look at rainwater harvesting, a UK website which puts average water consumption per head per year at around 55,000 litres, and a house with a roof space of just 50 square metres would collect on average 40,000 litres in the UK. But you won't find the government, the Environment Agency, or the National Audit Office, or indeed the World Economic Forum, and certainly not any of the water companies suggesting that you think about that. And announced just late last month, the government suggesting that water bosses might face up to 2 years in prison. This, when one looks into the detail, actually really just concerns non-compliance with an investigation, so unlikely to have much of an effect. But I would draw your attention to the Police Crime Sentencing Courts Act of 2022 and the offence under Section 78 of intentionally or recklessly causing a public nuisance. And the offence is committed by somebody who does an act or omits to do an act that they are required to do by an enactment or a rule of law. Now, of course, what this does do is to take away the offence, the common law offence of causing public nuisance. And it's just yet another sort of nail in the coffin of the common law. So that is, though, to be considered with regard to the water companies and indeed holding them to account. And of course, we've heard a story from Sandy just now about the merits of the challenge, and this piece of legislation could be used as such a tool.
Thank you, Charles.